Hello, Facebook world. I'll give you guys a minute to show up, and then we're going to talk a little bit about classical and operant conditioning. It's kind of interesting because when I turned on the video camera, my dogs got really excited because they have learned that video camera means dog training because they associate the two things. So even as I'm just setting up the video camera, my dogs are expressing their feelings about training, and their feelings about training are very positive. So what I have is a classically conditioned response to training, and that exhibits all the way back when I turned on the video camera. So in this case, that would be a really good thing. That's a positive classically conditioned response. Also called a CER, conditioned emotional response. So my dog's conditioned emotional response to starting a video camera is very positive. They're excited, they want to work. Now, if my dogs found training very stressful and they knew that I tended to record video of our sessions, then when I turned on the camera, they would have a different emotion, and it might not be a very good one. So maybe they would feel fearful when I turned on the camera. If that happened, then that would tell me that they had a negative conditioned emotional response. In both cases, I made no effort to teach this. So I did not try to teach my dogs that turning on a video camera would lead to a training session. They just figured it out. And in both cases, I would say I wasn't sitting around trying to figure out how to make my dogs happy. It just happened because the thing that follows turning on the video camera is working and having a good time with me. Now, I find that when dogs are excited when the video camera turns on and they're sitting on my head and being really quite obnoxious, I find that it's very easy to teach behavior because excited, engaged dogs want to learn. So the first part happened without my help. And the thing that leads to, a conditioned emotional response or classical conditioning, not only does it happen on the level of emotion, but it's not something you really think about. It simply happens. So if you have a boss and your boss comes and visits you in your office, and he comes 5 times, and maybe you're on the new side, and every time he comes in there and he tells you how much he loves having you there and how hard you're working and he's so excited about what you bring to the table, then when you see your boss in the hallway or you see him walking near your office, you might start to have a naturally positive response to that person, right? You didn't sit around thinking how much you want to like your boss. You just find that you really enjoy your boss and you appreciate his company. So when he's in the area, you feel good and you hope he'll come talk to you because you like the things he tells you. Now, if you have a boss and he comes and he says things to you and you don't like what he says and he tends to be kind of complaining a lot, then what you might find is that when you see your boss, even if he's at a distance and even if he's not coming by, you might feel a little anxious and not really wanting him to come and visit because he might say things you don't want to hear. And as a side effect, most of you probably know that if your boss says something negative once and something positive 9 times, we still tend to be a little anxious about the one because we tend to hold the negative things we hear more easily than we hold the positive things we hear. I don't know if dogs are that way, and I think that it very much depends on the individual. I think some people and some dogs are very optimistic and tend to hold on to what is right, and some are very pessimistic and hold on to what is wrong. There's clearly individual components to that. So let's say that your boss routinely comes and tells you nice things. Now, I'm not talking about handing over $5,000. I'm just saying he makes you feel good in a mild sort of way. Well, that puts you in a very receptive frame of mind if he wants to talk to you, right? Because you're in a good place. But if he hands you a check for $5,000 and you're really excited about that check, you might be really, really happy. But you're in an overwhelmed emotional state. And as a result of being in an overwhelmed emotional state, you're actually not in a good place to learn. Because you're so excited about your $5,000 that you're really struggling to hear what he's telling you he needs you to do. Now, if what he's telling you that he wants you to do is easy for you and routine, it won't be a problem. If what he's telling you requires very careful attention and learning on your part, you will find that even a very happy emotion is a problem for you because it blocks your ability to think and learn consciously. So that brings us to operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is when you are trying to learn because you know that it's in your best interest, right? That's a very different experience than simply existing. So Burrito sees me turn on the video camera and he gets very happy and very excited because it's worked for him. But when the video camera comes on, he's not excited because I just sit around and feed him. I don't. I actually ask him to work. At that point, what he learns is what is going to earn him food or toys or a lot of personal interaction and praise. That's when operant conditioning takes place. When the dog is thinking, what do I need to do to work this person into giving me something I want? So let's say you want your dog to spend more time on their dog bed. Well, one thing you could do is make their dog bed a really positive place to be. So for example, every time you notice that they're on their dog bed, you walk over and you put a chew on their dog bed or you drop a handful of food. It's understandable that your dog will want to spend more time on their dog bed because they have a classically conditioned response to the dog bed, which is positive. But what if you just want to teach your dog to go to the dog bed? What is the fastest way to do it? Well, it wouldn't just be to drop food on the dog bed when they happen to be in the area. What's going to work better for you and a whole lot faster is when you see the dog put 1 foot on that dog bed, you drop food on that dog bed. And pretty soon, you see, timing now matters. 1 foot on the dog bed, oh, I got a cookie. And then one day you notice the dog, he's looking at you, he puts 1 foot on that dog bed and he checks back with you. He looks at you to see if you're paying attention. And you are, because you reward him. That dog is conscious. That dog is working for the food, trying to cause it to happen. In both cases, the dog got food on the dog bed. In one case, the dog was simply there. And he's not thinking, my getting on this dog bed is what is causing this. He's simply having a really positive emotional response to being on his dog bed because he keeps getting fed there. It's working for him. In the other case, he's operant. He's thinking about how he's going to work you for food. The challenge with operant conditioning is dogs are not in a good place to think and process and make decisions, and neither are people, which is why I use the first example. When we are overwhelmed by emotions, and it doesn't actually matter which emotion you're talking about. If you're very angry, very happy, very scared, all of those, dogs share those emotions with us. They have a similar response to them. In all of those cases, if you are being strongly affected by the emotion, you are over threshold. So when we say you're over threshold, we mean that your emotions are sufficiently powerful at that time that they are blocking your ability to make good decisions. Decision making is on the cognitive level. It's an operant factor. So it's not necessarily that it's good or bad to be feeling emotional, but if what you're feeling emotional about has nothing to do with the training, it's going to be a problem. You're going to have a hard time learning. That's kind of the basics of classical conditioning. It works on the level of emotion. And operant conditioning, it works on the level of conscious thought. All the time you are being influenced by classical conditioning, just by whether or not you have a good time in your house. If you like being in your house, you have a positive reaction, you feel safe. If you go to your kid's classroom and you find yourself feeling nervous when you walk in the door, it could just be because you didn't enjoy school very much, and so you still have that emotional response when you're in school. And that will affect your ability to think and listen and cognitively process materials. The article I wrote yesterday, the blog I wrote, it was very interesting to me to see how people responded to it because it became very obvious to me that some people don't know the difference between operant and classical conditioning. If you ask your dog to do something, you have to know why he doesn't do it before you choose your response. If he doesn't do it because he's having an emotional response which is caused by something outside of your control, he has a very strong angry emotional response because he sees a dog he doesn't like. He has a very strong fearful emotional response because he sees a person or a dog that frightens him in the room. He has a very strong positive happy emotional response because a dog, his best friend in the whole world, just walked in the room. Any of those events switch his ability to go from thinking about you on a cognitive level and put him in an emotional level towards what is out there, what he cares about. So when your dog doesn't respond, at that moment, if you can say to yourself, he's not responding because he's so happy, so sad, so angry, then that will change how you respond. Do you have to give your dog a cookie? No. That's totally up to you. I wouldn't necessarily do that. But what you do have to do is find a way to get his emotions back into a place where you can actually work with the dog. And dogs that are over the top, angry, excited, fearful are sort of not trainable. Of those, there's no doubt in my mind that fear is by far and away the most potent. Fear is very, very powerful. It is a safety issue, and dogs will attend to that way before anything else. The others, you have an easier time getting the dog to your side, but fear, not so much. Everybody avoids fear a lot, right? So if your dog does not respond and you realize that it's because of one of these other things, then what you want to do is get him back into a better place. So if he's just so excited because somebody walked in, well, you have some choices. You can just end training and then the person leaves. You can end training and go visit the person and be done with it and come back. If you're kind of sophisticated about it, you might be able to figure out how to talk the dog into doing one thing for you and then releasing him to go see the person you want. That would depend how far over threshold the dog was. You might be able to do that. That's pre-mec, especially if the dog understood what you were trying to do. So you have some choices. But the question of, you asked your dog to sit. Your dog didn't sit. Should you withhold the cookie so that you don't reinforce the fact that he didn't sit? Now that's a waste of your time, because at that time he's not thinking about conscious decision making. And that was the point of the article yesterday. Where this becomes a huge factor is that so many dogs, when I look at them being trained, are not in a trainable place. They're not paying any attention to their owners at all for a lot of reasons. They're bored, they're fearful, they're whatever. Usually they're just bored, but work with me. It could be for a lot of reasons that they would choose not to attend to their owner. What matters is if you can fix that circumstance. But what I always tell people is if the dog is not happy and paying some kind of attention to you, you're making your job really hard. It's much harder to train a dog that's not engaged. So I hope that kind of clarifies what I was doing yesterday with that blog. Now I'll go ahead and see what your questions are and I'll run from there. Israel. I do know, thank you, Jen, I am not in the alumni group. This is sort of it doesn't matter who listens. Michelle, I have a negative CER to the smell of the dentist's office. I know, isn't that interesting? Now, I'm glad you brought up the dentist. Let's talk about that. That brings us to the issue of choice, which I'm not going to go into in depth here, but I am going to say this. Can you imagine if you went to the dentist's office and you sat down in the chair? Now, you know and I know that you do have choice about getting up and walking out. Odds are pretty good you won't, because you recognize it's in your best interest to be there, right? So you opt in, but you're not having a good time, but you still opt in because you recognize your best interest. Now, what would happen if when you sat down in the chair, if they strapped you down and held your head in place and said, this is the right thing to do. Don't worry, you were going to stay in the chair anyway, right? So what difference does it make to you if you're strapped in the chair, or if you know that if it gets grim enough, you'd have the option to get up and leave? That's what it's like for your dog. When you do unpleasant negative things, if you give them a choice and let them opt out, that allows a dog to stay in the game even when they may not want to. But if you force them to stay in the game, however it is you do that, and unpleasant things are happening, what you're doing is risking a panic response. So if you put your dog in a fear-inducing situation, you ask it to sit, the dog doesn't sit, and you use the leash in such a way to prevent it from leaving, and you force the issue. If your dog is fragile and fearful, you will create panic. If you create panic, now how do you think that dentist's office is going to smell in the future, right? If you have a really panicky response, you'll never forget it, and you'll probably never go back to the dentist. Yeah, a lot of you guys have little cues that your dogs follow, don't you? And your dogs know. Okay. Judy points out that CERs can apply to instructor human learner situations too. Yeah. When I teach seminars, what I tell people, because you know what, I'm perfectly nice to people, but they don't know that. I mean, even though they see me being nice to others, it's amazing how many people have had a negative experience learning and they felt stupid or incompetent, or they got yelled at by their instructor or whatever. And you can really hold that. You can have 100 positive experiences, but every time you see a new instructor, sometimes people stand in front of me and I actually worry for their health because they're sweating and stuttering and they're so uncomfortable. And that's interesting because it generalized from one instructor who mistreated them to all instructors. And each new instructor now has to prove that this instructor is going to be a nice one so that the person can start to relax. So how you treat your human students is a big deal. The other thing, when a new student is in front of me and they don't know that I'm going to be nice to them, they often really struggle to hear what I'm asking them to do. And that is because they are being flooded with an emotional response, right? Usually fear of looking stupid. That would probably be the most common one. And as a result, they really struggle to follow my directions because their brain is split. But they're trying. It's not that they're not trying. Of course they're trying. So what I tell people is make sure you video your lesson, because if you don't, you won't actually be able to remember what I told you to do. You won't be able to recall, because at that time you were not in a good place to learn. So standing in a room in front of 50 other people who you don't know, being directed by a person who may or may not be kind to you, is not a setup for success. And it's really similar with your dog. You take your dog into a new building where they're not terribly comfortable with a bunch of dogs they do not know and a bunch of people they don't know. And they may or may not be safe. They don't know. And you expect them to learn, and then they don't learn, and you get a little frustrated with them, right? So now your dog starts having experiences that aren't terribly positive. So that's something to think about. Over threshold, it doesn't matter which emotion you're talking about. Oh, do you want to talk about that for a second, Judy? Well, I'll say this. Some emotions, I would say fear kind of stands out for me, is quite powerful. It's quite negative. Nobody ever looks to fear. Nobody ever wants to feel fear. It's very unpleasant, especially when you start verging on panic. It's just kind of crappy. So when you're feeling fear, and when an animal is feeling fear, that's not going to be good. Other emotions, and this does matter, whether it's anger or joy or excitement, they put you in the same boat. You have the same problem. It's just that you experience them differently. So when something really exciting and positive happens, it still puts you in a place where you're not in a great place to learn. So if I have a really good day, for whatever reason, something exciting happened to me, and then I want to sit down and read a book that I really want to read, it's not that I don't want to read the book, and it's not that I'm not in a good place, but I'll have a hard time concentrating on the book because my brain will keep going back to the positive thing that happened to me. So when I have a really good day, I know I can just kind of blow off my work. I'll do the bare minimum that I have to do. But anything that requires creative thought, like writing, I won't even try to do it. Even if it's happiness that's driving me at that moment. Well, you guys are from all over the place. That's great. Whoops. I'm struggling to make this move. How do you find some motivation for an unmotivated dog? I'm trying to think if you're relating this specifically to classical conditioning. I'm going to say this. I'm going to assume that your dog has some motivation and that what you're asking me is when the dog is over threshold. So when the dog is not in an operant place. And when that happens, when your dog is not motivated because they're over threshold, if you cannot get the dog back at all, then I think you just need to leave and quit training at that time. If you mean in a more generic sense that your dog is simply not motivated, then you're going to, hopefully you've got something. Food, toys, or you can plan on spending your life in the mode of management. Because if your dog cares about absolutely nothing, that dog is kind of depressed and leaving a pretty low level life, and you're going to struggle. Can a dog be too happy about training? Yeah, a dog can be too happy about training, Shoshana. How do you deal with it? Well, so let's say that your dog loves toys up, down, around center. That can actually be a problem because if the dog is concentrating on the toy and not the route to the route to the toy is through you. But if the dog is so driven and so excited about what's out there that they can't think, then you have a couple of options. One is drop the value of the motivator, right? So if it's food, it's a little easier because you can go down to Cheerios from steak. If it's a toy, it's harder, but how you use the toy can impact that. So instead of throwing the ball 100 yards, just dropping it to the dog. The other thing is seriously ramp up your rate of reinforcement because as soon as you get into frustration behaviors, you're dead in the water. So if you can teach your dog, I have this thing you want and I absolutely promise you I'm going to give it to you. Rate of reinforcement needs to be super high. What that will do is calm the dog down. When they realize they're going to win, they'll settle down a little bit and you're going to be better off. The other thing is make sure that your motivators are things the dog wants and they're not life and death propositions. Because if your dog sees, so for example, if you were starving to death and you hadn't eaten in 5 days and somebody said, answer a few questions and I'll give you food, Can you feel how the panic would block your learning and your frustration would go through the window if they asked you to answer too many questions? So you're not motivated in a positive sense. You're motivated out of fear of starving to death. Don't ever let a motivator get to the point where your dog thinks that the absence of that motivator might lead to their demise, yeah? So some people, maybe they don't feed their dog or don't let their dog out of a crate unless it works for them. That's not a positive motivator. That's a life and death proposition. What it is you're telling the dog, if you fail, I'm going to take this thing away. That is technically a punisher. Don't go there. Well, or if you do, at least know what you're doing. How do you handle puppies biting? I'm going to let that, well, see, that's pretty far off the topic here. I redirect as best I can, or ask yourself if the dog is too tired to be working at that time. How do you dial down emotion on the spot? That's a good question. I may not be able to. Usually distance. So if the dog is too close to the thing that's got them hyped, distance is the easiest one for me to work with. I may be able to change emotional response with food really fast. So rapid fire feeding will calm a dog down. I'm sure there's people out here who say, no, you don't understand. My dog is starving to death. Well, that's a good point. If your dog thinks they're starving to death and you're in that life and death situation, then you're right. Your dog isn't eating for fun. But as long as your dog's eating for fun, eating will calm them down. So I will feed a dog, Leska, very rapidly if I think that's going to help. But I still am not going to train. If I have to do that, I'm not going to train the dog after that. I'm going to just calm them down enough that I can get somewhere else so I can reconsider my options. Marcella, would you say you get a quicker response with a puppy versus an adult dog with the waiting until the dog is engaged and emotionally focused, since the puppy doesn't have a history of having a training session where the dog ignores you? So Marcella, I think what you're asking me is comparing a learner who has experience with one who does not in relation to, that sounds more like engagement. What are you talking about? I don't know. I think all dogs, puppies do tend to learn a little faster than adult dogs, but I think adult dogs can very quickly learn new rules. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Cynthia, someone commented that their dogs are playing over threshold. That's interesting because often my pack gets too high and excited and it can turn into posturing and growling. It seems the best way for me to deal with this is say cookies and bring out the cookie jar to drop their drive. Any other suggestions? I actually think that's brilliant. When dogs wrestle, it's a lot like when kids wrestle. So what do we say when kids wrestle? We say, you better stop that or someone's going to get hurt. And why does somebody get hurt? Generally because somebody gets physically injured accidentally, and there's a very strong relationship between physical pain and aggression and anger. That's why you want to be a little careful if you go there, right? So with dogs, no question about it, that dogs can get too high, they get too excited, they start getting rough, somebody's going to get hurt by accident, that one's going to get mad, somebody's going to get nailed. And I think food is a fabulous way to solve that problem. Call cookies, hand everybody a cookie, and when they go back to it, they're in a different place. I think that's brilliant. That is what I would do. Is it ever appropriate or a good idea to use a clicker with classical conditioning? I don't know that I'd see any value to that. I think of a clicker as operant conditioning. Clicker itself would have a classically conditioned response for the dog, and what it will do is pull the dog off of something if they're upset, but I don't think of it that way. Judy, I'm mostly okay with looking stupid and recording it. I just may not watch it, at least right away. That's a good strategy. Hello. Guys, you guys are all over. Look, Africa, Belgium, Netherlands. That's great. Is there an effective way to bring the dog back under threshold? Distance and food. Those are the big ones. Feeding calms dogs down. Getting out of there calms dogs down. Can a dog, Brian, can a dog become too operant? If so, would one try and increase classical? I think what you mean maybe is a dog that's throwing behaviors. I don't think a dog is too operant. I think it's a matter of training the dog, what your expectations are. But that's a big topic. It's a good topic, but it's a big one and a little beyond this one. When the dog has the zoomies, what is the best way to get them back? Any way you can. Throw a cookie at them, that's fine. Sit down on the floor and call them to you, that's fine. Just remember when they get back, it's over, right? Just give them a few cookies, tell them you love them anyway, and get on with your life. Cheryl, when trying to build endurance, specifically in healing, and the dog has an emotional response to reduced reinforcers, would you say it is okay to use a couple of tricks to get them back? Yeah, for sure. For sure. Hello. Sorry for these pauses. It takes me a minute to read. How about demand barking? The dog is happy, wants his turn in the ring, and doesn't want to wait, can't relax. I would work on changing his emotional state to waiting. So just feeding him for free. Just dropping cookies in his crate and teaching him that doing nothing is actually worth his while. Some people, Ellen, don't want to do that because they're afraid that it'll make their dog not want to work when it's their turn. And I will admit that I used to have that concern too, but in my experience, it's just a non-issue. People like to use their brains and dogs like to use their brains. And dogs that are getting free cookies, if you want, use lower value cookies, just pop them in the crate until the dog settles down. When the dog comes out, things get really good really fast, right? The toys come out, the energy comes out, the jumping, the running, all that is fun. So if I was you, I would spend an incredible amount of time teaching your dog to sit quietly in the crate or on a blanket, or use a snuffle mat. A friend of mine, Brianna Long, made me some snuffle mats for one of my dogs, or for a couple of my dogs. And they're great, right? Because the dog can sit there and concentrate on that and settle down. And then by the time it's the dog's turn, you have a dog to work with. Laura, my dog has a trigger word, ready, and now barks at hearing, which keeps us from beginning the sequence in agility. Would it be better to counter condition the word or just start a new word? I'm looking for arousal without barking. Well, that a little bit depends on the dog, right? Your dog might just bark. If the barking is associated with over-arousal, then it doesn't really matter. You can absolutely counter-condition it, but I think what you're going to find is it's not the word. It's soon going to become the start of the sequence. So you have another problem, which is that your dog needs to learn how to be calm before you start. A dog can be very, very not moving and calm on the start line and pretty damn in drive and crazy. But you have to learn that not moving and being calm can absolutely be in drive. So just feed the dog food there and see if you can calm it down. Shoshana, when a dog is extremely excited about agility equipment, for example, how do you tone it down without hurting the motivation? My question to you would be, why do you think it's going to hurt the motivation? So let's say your dog primarily runs agility for a toy and you get more edge and energy and you're really happy. Calm the dog down with food. It is no trouble to go from 0 to 1,000, right? That's a training issue. You can teach a dog not to move and to be totally focused and focused on being calm, or that would be an operant approach, what I just described. Or you can do it classically and just teach the dog, I'm sitting on my mat, I'm being calm. I'm sitting on my mat, I'm being calm. Once you get off and you go to the equipment, the dog knows the difference. But I would suggest that you have both, because if you keep your dog in a high level of intensity for an entire agility class, or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you might find that your dog goes over threshold just because their brain hurts, because that's a lot of time. Judy, any comments on how to use LRS stands for least reinforcing stimulus. decent alternative to positive punishment and can be tricky timing-wise. Least reinforcing stimulus would just mean go to a lesser value thing. So if toys are your dog's deal, then switch to Cheerios just to try to calm them down. That's a perfectly good strategy. Do you think fear is harder to bring back to center than excitement? Lisa, do I think? I know. Fear is the hardest thing to get rid of. It is 10 times harder than excitement. I will take an over-the-top dog any day, I promise you, over fear, because fear generalizes incredibly fast, so that's a big problem. Fear, dogs will get into the it could happen again thing forever. I mean, one bad experience at the dentist, I promise you, that causes you a lot more grief than one really happy experience. Fear is way harder to work with. I go to great trouble not to have problems with fear, and when I see them, I do something about it. Timothy, can you explain why correction or balance training is bad, or why you don't do it? Oh, that's a big topic. I don't do it. I don't need it. So that's one reason. There is fallout with punishment. There's other things to think about. Shall I be blunt? I'll just be blunt. What the hell? In my experience, 95% of people have nowhere near the skills they need before they should be going to punishment. So it seems to me you should be a pretty good trainer before you mess around with that. Sure. Okay, Cynthia. My dogs seem to get more excited sometimes when I put them on a stay or a wait, and then they burst out. How can I get them to stay more calm? Well, remember, if you're doing an active stay, that's totally different. So if it's ready, even if you're not saying it, if your dog is just sitting there and then you have them bust out, you're teaching it. So when my dogs want to go in the pool area, I shut the gate and I say, until you sit, I'm not going to open the gate. They're bottling up that edge. That is not calm at all. Sure, it's a sit, but it's not. There's nothing calm about it. It's a sit ready to go wacko on me. If I actually want the dog to be calm, that's a whole nother ball game. And then I'm going to sit there feeding. Think repetitive, right? Repetitive feeding. Open the gate, shut the gate, feed the dog. Open the gate, shut the gate, feed the dog. Open the gate, feed 20 cookies on the floor on the inside of the gate. For our purposes, unfortunately, this kept scrolling. And so sometimes I have a hard time staying on track here because I get distracted. So I would say, Cynthia, what comes after the stay or the wait? And I've had really good food, like luck just using food. Food is great for calming dogs down. Open the door, throw a handful of food down. Open the door. I actually did, now that I think about it, I did a video and a blog on this topic on my pet dog blog, talking about what happens when I let my dogs in the house. It's kind of unattractive. You know, they come bashing through the door. And I walked through all the steps that I took and the things I tried, and I addressed exactly your issues. So go look for that. My pet dog blog is denisefenzipetdogs.com, I think. I haven't written there in a bit. Oh, Mercedes, any comments on dogs who manifest fear as excitement? So we would call that stressing up. So some dogs, when they're nervous, they start kind of climbing up you and they get really clingy and they get bitey with their owners. They get kind of that, and they often kind of squeak. I lost my question. There we go. You know what? Fear is fear. It doesn't matter if it looks happy. If you know what you're looking at, you know, when you start seeing those big eyes and footprints and those ears are doing that kind of weird Yoda, thing, I don't care that the dog is energetic. I'm going to treat it the same way. I want the dog to calm down. But I totally get that, because it took me much longer to recognize stressing up from stressing down. Rachel, what would you do for a dog when given a cue like down, hears it but doesn't respond? What I've been doing, if the dog doesn't perform it on the first try, I just wait a second, tell them what a good try it again, but I feel like I'm not getting what I would like to see, which is the first time I get the command, you perform it. So actually what you said is not a bad strategy, right? Wait a second, say good try, that's fine, move on. I do differentiate if I'm first teaching a behavior like down. In my house, quiet environment, absolutely nothing going on. Well then, if I give you food, it means you did it right. If I don't give you food, it means you did it wrong. That's fine, no problem with that. But that's a training step. So once I feel like the dog is nailing it in my house and nailing it in a lot of environments, if I go somewhere else and the dog is not nailing it because of other stuff going on, that's when we're talking about an emotional response. That's when I'm just gonna feed the dog and get the dog out of there and find a better space. I wonder if you don't have enough repetitions at home with controlled distractions. So for example, you ask your dog to down. I'm assuming that you're getting good speed, at least in familiar environments. Otherwise, your dog doesn't understand what you're looking for. And in my opinion, speed is usually a function of confidence. Most dogs that are confident move faster. I mean, there's some dogs are just genetically not running fast moving dogs for sure. But usually dogs that feel pretty good will give you, let's call it their genetic max. They'll give you their best bet. If you go somewhere else and it's slow, then look around and decide if it's the place you're at, if maybe you need a little better place, or maybe you need to add a little excitement at home. You know, let's say turning on the vacuum gets your dog a little crazy. Well, practice your downstays until they're really good in your bedroom. Turn on the vacuum cleaner on the other side of the house, go back in your bedroom and try your downstays. So now you can start adding small doses of excitement and see if you can push your training that way. All right, Marcella. Earlier talked about the life-death situation you don't want your dog to feel with the reinforcer. What about a dog who has to eliminate and you're working on impulse control at the door? Would this be counterproductive? I'm thinking you could work the dog after, but then how do you manage in between? Well, let me tell you, I'm not going to have the dog pee or poop on my floor. I'm going to open the door and I'll work on it later. If the dog really needs to get out, they really need to get out. I would just let them out. I don't consider, remember, life is not a training opportunity. You don't have to make all of life about training if you don't want to. Normally at the door and such, I would, well, if I'm being good and really working with my dogs, I'll wait for them to offer the behaviors I want, but if necessary, I won't. And what the hell? Stick a cookie in front of their nose, open the door, say sit, stick a cookie there so that they sit. Oh, they sat. Give them the cookie, out they go. You're welcome, Rachel. I keep Okay, that one just answered her own question. Any comments on the use of NRMs? An NRM is a no reward marker, especially in agility where things can happen quickly. You know, in the agility world, I give them a lot of credit because if there's one thing they've figured out, it's just reward everything. You know, it doesn't matter. Dog screwed up, reward them. You screwed up, you trained it wrong. Dog screwed up, reward them. You screwed up, you put them in a bad environment. Dog screwed up, reward them anyway. They're smart. I mean, they really are. They're right. Because training for competition is all about things you have prepared the dog to do. If you prepared the dog correctly for the environment you're in, then they would do it. If you did not prepare the dog correctly for the environment they're in, then they won't. So can you or should you use a no reward marker? Let me tell you this. Sometimes they come out of my mouth and I don't even know they did, usually because I'm feeling a little frustrated. So I'll go, oh, or no. And then I'll realize afterwards I've done it. I don't think my dogs are having a meltdown over that, but it's a mental, it takes me a minute to say, oh, shame on me. That wasn't great. But you know what? That's the way it is, right? So I think when we think of no reward marker, what we're trying to do is tell the dog that thing you just did there, that's not going to get reinforced. But if the dog actually knows the behavior, they should have already known that. So I don't know why you need to provide that additional information. If the dog didn't know the behavior, then you're wasting your time and you're just depressing your dog. I'm doing this Spanish program, and every once in a while, if I don't get any answers correct on the thing, it goes, da, da, da. I hate that. I think that's, what, you think I don't know? I didn't get any right? I just failed the whole damn thing. I know it. It adds no value to my learning. It just depresses me. I would like to send them, I will, maybe I should just write them a note and tell them I just don't appreciate that at all. That's not effective learning. Nobody wants to hear what they did wrong. Just get on with what you did right. You guys good? I think I got your questions. I feel pretty good about this. So that's what I wanted to say. I hope that was helpful. That's, how long did that take? Wait, that can't be right. We haven't been doing this for 40 minutes. I hope not. So much for 10 or 15. I hope that was helpful. Talk to you later. Oh my God, I almost forgot. You're supposed to go buy my books. So you can do that on my website, denisefenzi.com. There. My son will be proud. Bye.